Good space time, y'all. In this episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, I speak with Phoebe Poon, founder of Likecoin, an open source decentralized publishing protocol built on Cosmos SDK. We discuss storage, publishing, history, social media, and Web3. We also talked about the importance of preservation, the role of the community, and surviving crypto winters.
Sometimes we need to wait for certain social contexts to happen to let the layman or majority of the mass understand why this matter. The mindset of running a startup is very important.
The most important invention in the world is history, because it doesn't matter what weapon you have. If you control history, then you control everything else. What if there was no heaven?
We know we cannot expand too quick to be lean. And so that's why we can survive a lot of crypto winters.
Before we rock it off into our next episode, here are some news from the sponsor of this episode, the Cyber Congress DAO. The foundation has started its delegations policy for validators on the Bostrom blockchain, and the Space Pussy network was launched, with 96% of its supply to be dropped to various Cosmos ecosystem chains. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast. I have with me Phoebe today from Likecoin and from Likeland. Phoebe, hi, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us about everything you do and working on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm Phoebe, one of the founding team member of Likecoin, also currently the team of Likeland, where we started building around decentralized publishing and work with a lot of media and writers from where we came from on utilizing blockchain and also decentralized storage to build a better future for publishing. We actually started in about 2017 on Ethereum, exploring the idea of reinventing the more on monetization part. And then after we have almost complete our white paper, we decided to go one step further to develop our own sovereignty chain and application specific chain on publishing on Cosmos in 2019. It felt like a long time ago, but yeah, that was a hell of a ride in Cosmos. And then now we are in 2022 having our chain and connected with a lot of other chains using IBC and serving a lot of our users, especially in Southeast Asia. So yeah, it's a very interesting application specific chain on publishing. I guess in Cosmos, we might be the only one working on this area and vertical right now. And that's how Cosmos works, right? Like the Internet of Blockchains serving different kind of vertical in this space. So I'm very happy to be here today to share about what we do.
Nice, nice. It is a hell of a ride if you think about it. I mean, for crypto since 2019, even 17, right? This is like a couple of dinosaur extinctions, definitely. And I'm not joking around. You know, if you look at like all the projects that have been since then have been reborn, died, and never came back, it's definitely like a few mass extinctions. So well done on that. And we'll definitely talk a little bit about that. First thing is first that I would like to ask you, and this is going to be like a really lame, simple question, but I would love to hear your explanation as somebody who is, like you said yourself, spent already so many years working on that. What is the difference for a person out there between media and publishing and decentralized media and decentralized publishing? So for somebody out there who is maybe a little bit clueless about what we're all doing over here, maybe has some experience, doesn't matter, but what would you explain as somebody who spent so long working on it? How would you describe the differences?
Yeah, wow, that's great questions to kick off the discussions because I have a lot of stories to tell about how we educate non-crypto people to get into this space. The first thing is majority of the time you are not educating them about the product, but actually educating them about the basic of blockchain 101. And majority of your time are actually teaching them how to create a wallet. I think that's the first very funny and fundamental part of being working with a lot of layman users is that before you actually introduce them what Litecoin is or what decentralized publishing is, you need to create wallet and why it matters to you. So I think that's the first part where you need a lot of patience to fill the gap between Web3 and Web2 world. So that's the first thing. And I guess the second thing we observe is that we see a transition between, at least from 2019 to today, 2022. It's because the social context is a little bit different now. I remember when we first started on Cosmos and start to onboard users using our plugin, let's say on WordPress, people are actually very intimidated about creating wallets and all those stuff going on blockchain, or why do we need to store on IPFS. However, because of where I came from, the social context tell them, hey, there are actually things that could be disappeared one day in just one night. Given it could be a 30 years old newspaper, or it could be as simple as your Twitter account or Facebook account that could be got deleted in just one night. And you actually spend your entire like 10 years of time and effort building all your social graph, writing all your blogs, even all your content. Some people even craft a lot of good status on their Twitter. You see all the Twitter storm, or even on Facebook. And when they experience those situations firsthand, I mean, knowing something could be disappeared, they start to realize what we have been telling them is a solution towards a problem right now. So I guess is the learning for us too is sometimes we need to wait for certain social context to happen to let the layman or majority of the mass understand why this matter. That was quite a very remarkable month for us, especially in the past 2 years, where we see a spark in adoption of what we built, especially the tools that we have in place. People start to reach out to us instead of us reaching out to them. So I guess this is a very interesting atmosphere and user adoption observation compared to a lot of different projects. Thirdly, I think is also because a lot of Web3 projects, they don't really have the right tool to onboard laymen without technical knowledge. Especially we work with writers and journalists, meaning the expertise is in writing, meaning they don't have understanding on any technical work. And so you actually need to prepare a lot of documentation, a lot of tutorial, and a lot of walkthrough in person that will take a lot more time than getting people on board to any DeFi projects. They will instantly get, because they like trading, they already in the atmosphere of being in FX or traditional trading. So when they adopt to DeFi projects, it's much more easier. But compared to us, when it's a product that merged into Web2 user flow, it's a little bit hot and you need a lot of more workflow. So I will share a little bit like three of these about point on like the experience that we had.
This is awesome. And I still want to talk a lot more about the experience because it's really interesting to see what the projects have learned over those the like projects that are not there for like half a year but much longer. There's a lot in my opinion to be learned from you guys, and it's awesome. But before we get a little bit more into that, I still want to dig a little bit about the decentralization spectrum that we started to talk about. And as you were explaining, you mentioned a couple of times not why, but you mentioned that it matters to change to decentralized publishing. You also said that it will bring a better future. And there was several times where you mentioned like something like that, but could you explain why in your opinion that future is better? Why does it matter for us to change from the publishing model that we have today on Web 2 to what you guys are proposing and to what blockchain is offering in general?
Yeah, I think I would bring up several aspects of things. The first is to reinforce why I mentioned social context is so important in terms of the understanding or why we need this product nowadays, today, not before or tomorrow. I think first is where I came from. A lot of pro-democrat media actually got shut down in 2 weeks of time. Historical record of a 30 years newspaper got wiped out in one night. And that's part of where historical preservation or content preservation is one of the important aspects of having publishing on a decentralized manner. I think that's the first thing is very important. And the second is how we can actually improve the current publishing industry from a sunset era to somewhere individuals can actually participate and have much more ownership and potentially to monetize open content. Especially it's because Web2 business model isn't really catered for open content. As you can see, a lot of media actually pursuing a paywall model or even a subscription model that actually isn't really working so well. And most importantly is if media set up a paywall for information that meant to be distributed much more wider, much more broader, so that important truth of some certain of social aspect that need to deliver is actually deterring them from doing so because of paywall. So meaning people who not afford to pay or who cannot access, unable to access to all this important content. So I think for our vision is there should be a way for open content to be monetized and also to have a better way to preserve them as of a history record. And also, most importantly, there's a way to prove the social content integrity of that particular content. I think this is quite important when you look back into history or also because of the social context that we have. And if you read the book of Animal Farm, social content integrity actually important when it come back to be a reference point of information where you actually want to have a place you can actually fact check it. You can use some certain time of timestamp to proven some kind of work. And all this need to be done or is a better way to be done in a decentralized manner. So I think in combined, there are three keywords that I would say why do we need decentralized publishing. One is content integrity. Second is content preservation. And also thirdly is how open content could look for a better business model and monetization model. Not just for the creator themselves, but also how they actually build community around their fan base and also how they actually sustain a better content quality in terms of the ecosystem. When you think about it, currently there are a lot of media model are actually relying on advertising, and then I'm sure a lot of people already realize if the sole business model is relying on advertising, meaning whoever can pay you more, the more content you will create around those. And meaning you will see a lot more same content for the people who can pay. However, for quality content that actually not attracting advertising will have more or less presence in the internet. And then at the end of the day, humankind will be more less to expose to quality content, but instead it will become a more commercialized content filling in our daily lives. So I guess that would be leading to a more bigger problem that we see in the long run. So that's why I think it's very important to explore how Web3 can empower all this kind of not just business model, but different kind of how content should be published and how content should be owned and how content should be distributed.
Of course, I think it was totally agree with everything you say. I think it was Isaac Asimov, right, who said the most important invention in the world is history, because it doesn't matter what weapon you have. If you control history, then you control everything else, right, including religion and including any other form of anything else. So preservation, definitely, I think one of the most important things. And on a note of preservation, actually, I would love to hear, if you don't mind, your opinion. I think it's a big discussion of the history of when and how did we progress in terms of media, and from going from newspapers to distributed media to decentralized media. Do you think that that progression, from the New York Times or the Sunday Times, London Times, whatever, being number one of source of information for the whole world, has that changed? Are things like methods of distribute platforms that allow you to do like Likecoin, like Mirror, and so on and so forth? Has that really changed the way we as humans, as the end user, perceive information and where we take our content from? Or is that still a progress that is still going to be going on for many, many years to come?
I definitely see it is still evolving, especially from what you said, editorial generated content, right? New York Times, BBC, CNN, Wall Street Journal, they're all, majority of them are editorial generated content, which is, I would say, the Gen 1 of how media started. And they still as hold a lot of centralized power in terms of influence and impact. However, I do see a switch with the rise of Patreon, Medium, Substack, like even Mira, like XYZ, even Litecoin. We're actually doing some more focusing on user generated content. And I still see it evolving. I think they're all looking for a way to sustain this whole business model. And in terms of how we can gather writers and how we gather readers, is because I think we're not lacking of writers. We are lacking of readers. How we can actually gain the attention span of readers to read quality content. So I think it is still evolving. And now with the Web3 in place, people can have more imagination of what potential it could be in terms of this transformation, I would say. I think especially during COVID, we see a lot more information or had a rise in terms of readership on this kind of user generated content during COVID, especially because it was outbreak from China, and China had a more compressed media landscape. So in terms of people wanted to know what happened inside, it actually relied on a lot of this Web3 media platform to actually distribute their information. So I would say social context actually also play a very important role in terms of how people adopt or how people actually change their behavior of where they preserve information. And different like major crises will also bring a new behavior. And I think I see this a lot more during COVID and post COVID. Actually, also during some Western event, right? Like the presidential election of Donald Trump, the whole thing, how they switch from major media to social media. I think the whole landscape, no matter it's institutional player or users like from the funnel, bottom of the funnel, the whole funnel is actually evolving to become more and more hybrid. And even I think tier one media are actually struggling to keep their writers or columnists on them because why would they let New York Times like take a majority cut of their readership or even traffic? Instead, they can actually start it there on Patreon or Medium or something like that. So I think there's still like a unspoken battle between two. And I think the balance between these two will be very interesting to see. Yeah, so one thing that we also observe and notice is people who actually care enough about their content, they also moving away from platform centric publishing platform. Let's say Mira.xyz or Mira or Medium or Substack. So one thing that writers actually don't have time to manage is you need to handle multiple platform or distribution channel. And that's actually a headache. Let's say we had a podcast today. We want to put it on YouTube, Spotify, or even like Google Podcasts. Like there's a lot of distribution channel, and how they can actually distribute better sometimes might not be lie on one single platform. So our approach is also the same. So Likecoin isn't a platform itself. It's actually a infrastructure layer. It's like a publishing stack that can facilitate in all kind of websites, especially WordPress. Because we believe if a writers actually care enough of their own content. They actually want the full autonomy of their sites, their traffics, so that they can work on the SEO, so that they can monetize or explore different business model. It's just not one. We believe it could be a hybrid business model. So some might still rely on a lot of Web2 business model, let's say subscription, let's say advertising, but then they can also add some element of Web3. And that's where our plugin, our tools came in, where they can actually play around with, collect as an NFT, or even monetize with our like button. So all this kind of mixture, I believe, would fit in the current publishing landscape because it's still evolving. I don't think there will be a clear cut between Web 2 and Web 3. So if we won't see like a clear jump, let's like for journalists saying, oh, let's jump directly into Web 3. Let's set everything on Mirror.xyz or like something like that. I think it's really hard for them to get over that hurdle. That's why our position of our product, majority of them are actually the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. They have a choice to get a hybrid business model. They have a choice to store their stuff on IPFS or Arweave, or they can also still choose to store on centralized platform. It doesn't matter. We believe it would be a process of education to layman users, especially in the publishing industry, for media players, for publishers, for journalists, for editor, to understand, hey, there's actually something new that you can add in to your current workflow. So I think that's very interesting to see their acceptance level. I think also on the recent like NFT hype, a lot of majority of magazine or newspaper actually exploring that as well. I think Times did it. Some of them not quite successful. Some of them did quite well. I think they're all start to explore new business model to survive, right? So I will see this evolvement coming along.
Would you say, on the topic of advertisement model, because I think that is a very important part of that, and would you say that it's fair enough to say that it's not about so much the advertising model, because I think that will change a lot, And I think the Web3 market is still going to explore that, whether it's going to be, like you say, like a plugin, a tool, or whatever that you guys use, or the fact that you can monetize your own content and so on. I think the biggest change is from people thinking in their mind, okay, I'm working for a company or I'm working for a freelance company, to me, I'm the content. And a lot of people, when they kind of understand that what the hustlers economy, right? I guess, when they realize I'm the content, not the other company, then that's when the big change, the big shift, I think, happens with people. At least that is in my experience. Would you say that is true in your experience and the experience that you work with other people? Or for them, it's more important to understand, like you said, okay, we have a tool that can make us money. It doesn't matter who is the content or who produces it. Where is the shift happening? In the mind or in the tools that the person uses? I guess that's the question.
I think the NFT hype actually proven that it's more on the mind than the tools, because we have been trying to educate laymen on MetaMask, on why you need to own your key, own your content, all this kind of saying. Tools are ready. I think it's the people not ready. And once you see more peer getting into this landscape, they start to switch in terms of their conceptual of what is crypto, what is blockchain, and what could NFT do. So I would say mine is over tools, because tools is quite easy to build, frankly speaking. Although like with a really seamless experience of UI or UX, it could take time, but it's not that difficult. Instead, how people are willing to accept and give it the first try is the most difficult part. So I would say mind. And I think most importantly for Web3 compared to Web2 is, does it allow individual to have a choice? I think that's very important. For Web2, since majority of our daily consumption on social media or publishing on media, they are quite centralized. You actually don't have a choice or don't have a say in terms of how you actually want to own your content or how you want to monetize them. You basically don't have choice in the infrastructure level where things should be done. Even royalty is quite centralized structure right now. But in the high side, Web3 could deliver a better future in terms of this. However, I think what is lacking out right now is a successful use case, especially in our vertical. I would say NFT brought up a lot of more discussion in terms of creators economy, but majority of the discussions are still around art pieces, gaming assets. But for more day-to-day content, it's still lack of discussion of how it could evolve or how it potentially can be. And this is like a both way sword, right? Because NFT kind of now layman had a image of what NFT should be. They have a framework because of what the story or the market has been telling them. Oh, it could be a pixel art. It could be something like that. But then how could be a blog as an NFT? But when you think about it, NFT is just a format of how you're carrying all this kind of content. What you're buying isn't the NFT. What you're buying is actually the content itself. So I think this story still takes time to evolve when more use cases are coming up. But I do see a lot of more industry leader leading towards that end. Like Vitalik had his book in NFT format. E-publications are actually thinking about adopting royalties in terms of on-chain royalties, because it actually does make sense as well if you are having a huge secondary market of on publishing for school publishing. So I think this is more like a mind or storytelling time instead of tools. Tools are ready, not the heart, but mind. It takes a lot of different elements: social context, peer, industry. Also, the recent market crash might scare off some people about crypto as well. So I think it's a lot of element coming to that storytelling and transitioning for people get into this industry.
Definitely. I think one of our things, like as a project, is to say that our goal is building for decentralized or at least distributed communications. There is a lot of projects out there. This is actually my next question, that are in one way or another trying to do that. And I guess my next question is about the differences and about how Likecoin stands out there. So there is, from what I know, from the ones that I'm going to mention, like on top of my head, I'm sorry for anyone else out there that I will now not mention, but I can think of Urbit, which is a weird one, but that's definitely still communication. Not much, or many heard of it. but still there is like Steemit, there is Mirror XYZ, Likecoin, there is Cyber with their like the social graphs. There is the thing Aave is building right now, right? There's Dether, I think, was on Cosmos. So there is, I think, in 2017, I remember a lot of them. There was like Alice, it was a Japanese project, which didn't really survive that long. But anyways, from the big ones that come to my mind now, and all of them, they kind of pursue different methods of decentralized communication. But the ones that I think I would like you to talk about, or well, you're free to talk about all of them, or any of the ones you want, are what is the main differences between Litecoin from a point of what it's offering from the proposition, from the value proposition, I guess, compares to things like Steemit and Mirror or Hive, I guess, if you want to call it Hive or whatever. So yeah, sorry for the long question.
Yeah, no worries. I got it. I think the major difference is Litecoin is a Web3 publishing stack. It is not a particular platform that we want to offer to users. So there are several layers that we want to deliver to users. First is when media come to us, they actually had a application specific chain that is ready to facilitate in terms of different kind of module. A module, it means what we included in the chain level. So the one thing that we built is called the metadata registry. So it's like the library system having an ISBN catalog. And I think this is one of the things very unique in our chain level because we do believe if you need to improve the current publishing landscape or set a better infrastructure for people to get into Web3 and build a point publishing, you need a ISBN layer first so that we can build things on top of it. So that's on the chain level where we want to take care of metadata registry so that when you point to different storage, you can actually have a card, just like how you go to the library, you can actually search, hey, this book is actually in somewhere in the world, in which library? And you can see the inventory, you can see all the metadata of this book, which version of it. You can even see if it's available on Amazon. So it is actually the base layer of how publishing should be organized and cataloged. So I think that's the first thing that's very different compared to other centralized platforms, because I don't think they had an infrastructure support in terms of how things should be organized and cataloged and metadata. How is there a framework of how publishing in Web3 should be? And this infrastructure can actually facilitate a lot of different platforms. So meaning Steam can actually adopt this module into their platform. Even Mira can actually take this module to use it to catalog their stuff. So it is a more generic framework that can suitable for all kind of publishing, no matter it's Web 2 or Web 3. So that's the first layer, which is the chain layer, is a very application specific for publishing design. And the second layer, which is the application layer that we have, instead of building a platform, ask people to come to adopt a new, entirely new ecosystem, we build plugins. So the first very standout example would be the WordPress plugin that we have. So basically, there's no migration needed for writers or media site that want to try Web3 solutions. They only need to download a free plugin where they only have to create a wallet. And they can actually start publishing to Arweave, to IPFS, to register metadata on Litecoin chain, everything in one plugin. First is we do believe each site should transform themselves. We shouldn't ask writer or journalist to move their entire site to a new platform because that couldn't scale. At the end of the day, we don't want to be the one maintaining the platform. You should be the one because you know your fan well. You are the content creators. You want to work on the traffic with some Web2 business model, go ahead. If you want to monetize your fan base, you can try this plugin. So basically, we are powering each site to be their own Mira.xyz instead of asking everybody come to a platform to create an account to write on it. So I think that's the second major difference. Even on the application layer, we want to have a plugin that can facilitate other people to transform. Even it could be an institutional media sites, or it could be as small as individual blogs. So that's the plugin that we have. And then we also have the ecosystem where we onboard a very different set of validators in terms of other chain in Cosmos. We have the hybrid set. We onboard early on media player, let's fact check center, media, from the Web2 space. And then we have Cosmos well-known validators on board so that they can actually create a community and a DAO and an ecosystem where we have domain expertise of how publishing should be in the future, or how they gatekeep the entire ecosystem when there are proposals related to, hey, how can we vote on certain things? They can actually come out and tell their domain expertise. So that's something that when we invite our Genesis validator, we already had the mindset in mind. If we want to create an ecosystem for content lovers, that we want to attract media publishers and readers, what kind of people, what kind of governors that should be? It can't be solely Web3 validators because they don't understand what they're doing. But instead, if you see Fact Check Center here, media here, oh, they're doing something interesting, then people are more widely open, and we can actually maintain the governance in a more down to earth level. It's not something always on parameter change. It's not something always on the chain level, right? So as the ecosystem to grow, we believe this hybrid set of validators could help us drive more. And also, I think the lastly is that the publishing stack that we provide is actually very well friendly. It's not a competitor to all of those projects that we mentioned. Instead, we are able to connect them to plug in to something that they found it useful. Let's say we had that plugin get actually integrate IPFS and Arweave. So projects don't have to go between protocols to think about storage. Late users don't have to think about, oh, if I need to publish this blog into Arweave or IPFS, I should go to somewhere else and then come back here. Everything is packed in one thing. They just only click, do you want to publish it to here? And we basically pack. So this kind of ready tool is available for other projects to use. I also see this is the most interesting part of Web3 projects where you can actually cooperate between each other's different platforms because the stack itself is open source and you can use it as you want. So I think that's the major difference of us. And today we have about 1,000 active installations on WordPress. We have almost 8,000 sites that actively installed our Likecoin button, where you can like is a reward for your content, etc. So you can see all these media standalone themselves can facilitate as mirror.xyz with what we provide. So I think that's the major difference between us and other projects approach, I would say.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I think if anyone was to follow the change that the industry has gone through from the last major bear market, I'm talking about 17, 18 or 18, 19 here rather. I don't think that during the first two bear markets, the 15 and the 13 or 11, whatever we count as the change, because there was not much projects, but there was a big change in terms of where the projects on application level, the app specific projects have tried to change to the model you're talking about. Instead of like, okay, we have a product, come to us, we're building a new chain. You see in a lot of like projects are trying to do what you're saying. Okay, what we need is now a plugin. What we need is not the projects to just come to us. We need to go to them and for them to understand that we have the tools. But the question I do want to ask is actually a very interesting one. I'm going to like start a little bit ahead as well. In 2016, I had the experience of trying to launch the first ever Russian social network on Web3. It was called Golos. And we launched an ICO, and it was an experiment. It was a big thing for us and for the whole Russian blockchain market. This was back in 2016. This was before ICOs. It was the first official fork of Steemit. It was like really official fork. And the question is this: what was the biggest failure of this experiment for us? And in my opinion, it depends how you look at it, whether it was a failure or a success. Was, in my opinion, the economical part, the economics, underlying economics. It was not. No, it was just like you could milk it. You could people could use it, could abuse it. They found ways which, and this was, in my opinion, the biggest failure. And this is why I think what kind of pushed me away from Web3 social networking for a while, or Web3 social, like those things for a while. In your opinion, and in the form of how Litecoin does it, how important is economics? Because this is something we still haven't talked about. I mean, we talked about the stack, about preservation, about creating a better future. What about the economics, the rewards? Is that important? And how important that is? Will people do all those things, install those plugins, be their own media if they wouldn't get anything for it, rather than just the preservation and the ability to fact check or whatever, for example? But what if there was no reward? Like, what if there was no heaven? If you're a religious person, let me say it in a different way. And at the end of the day, there is no heaven. Would religion be still as valuable? And I don't mean it with offense.
No, no, no. That's a great sharing. Thanks for sharing your experience as well. That's a great question. I think economic incentives always come into place because that's the human nature, right? So like was started as like as a reward. So like as a reward where we want to promote the idea or educating the public about, hey, content should be paid in some sort of way and your content should be rewarded just like how much like you receive on Facebook. They're just up in the air. What if it could be like a real reward? So that was like a really early idea in 2017. I think people are really hyped about that around that. However, when the social context that come in, when we evolve to be a more decentralized publishing angle, I think we also change it, evolve along with the social context that we are in. I think at least nowadays, journalists in my area or in Southeast Asia, they're fully aware that their stuff cannot be stored on centralized storage. It's not something that we educate in or we give them money to do so, but because they experience firsthand of how their stuff could be disappeared in one day. So I think that's a little bit different in terms of social context. So I think that rely on what kind of experience they have in their own society. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, yes, I think economic incentive is still very important as well. And that's why we offer not just like the tokenomic incentives, right? But also how they can own a piece of NFT, let's say, of their memories, of their blogs, or even book NFT. We recently had a campaign on book NFT, and people are actually exploring this in this format. And NFT also lie with a little bit of economic incentives, right? When people collect NFT, they would have thought they could have resell it with a high price, or they can actually own a piece of NFT that could grow in value. So I think that still lie under people's mind. But you will be surprised when we tell them, oh, writing NFT or book NFT, we are not actually looking into that kind of NFT hyped it, flipped it, inflated price model. We are actually looking for something. How much would you like to pay for this kind of content that you preserve, you liking it, or you want to subscribe to authors? How much would you pay? You'll be surprised people are actually willing to pay than we thought in terms of something they value. So what when I say value, it means the value of collective memories. It could be non-economic incentive driven kind of value. So I think that's the most fascinating part that we discovered, especially because we started as reward campaign, become now more on decentralized publishing, more on integrity, content preservation, and now towards the new understanding, not new understanding, but more reinforced on the value of the non-economic side. Because you can imagine there are still a lot of people are actually paying for content, I believe, especially if I think you're in the podcast. I've been paying a lot for audiobooks, for newsletter. Because if you are a person that actually consume a lot of this kind of content, you will see good content actually need to be sustained with someone willing to pay. And I think we actually gathered a community that had this similar mindset along the years. And I do believe these kind of people exist. If those people who tell you they won't come in for incentives, I would say they are not our target audience for now, but there are still majority of people who are willing to do so. Especially if you see the rise of Patreon, they are actually paying just for the content. They don't really have incentives on economic side where their content would be flipped in terms of like the NFT hyped up market. So I think we should take a balance of that. Where would economic incentive driven social network will be a sustainable model for people or real users to stay? I think the more we see it is not the answers. Is it need to be a hybrid of truly find out what people actually care and what they value along above economic incentives. So I think that's a great we are in a great status where we're exploring this, especially with like writing NFT. we've been asking a lot of our community members, why would you purchase a writing NFT or a blog that won't increase in price or won't be like a hyped up piece of work? You find different fascinated reason. It could be because they pursue for collective memories, because they're getting a postcard. I myself might personally posted my wedding ceremony on as a blog, and there are actually 10 and 20 people collected it, and they're paying for it because they want to be part of my journey of my life. So I think there are a lot of value in terms of what the product could offer to people, and you will be surprised they're beyond economic incentive. However, for a project like us, for application specific projects, you often see a gap between trading activities and the usage itself. I would still think this is a difficult gap for us. We need to fill in how you can actually attract people to speculate your token in terms of like because trading activities, right? That's something that you want, like volume, liquidity. Versus you have a superset of users that are actually using your stuff every day, but they're not people that will attract to trading, which mean the economic incentives that attract them to go trade and increase in value, etc. So I think this is a dilemma of a project owner, how you can actually bring this to a common ground where you can show people the holistic view of the entire project. So that's a headache problem that I think a lot of projects would face. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered the question, but seems that's great to spark some new discussion too.
Definitely. I think the whole movement of trying to put on the same weights objective income, because, well, the income is objective, it's not subjective. People, we can change that to money if we want. And I'm not saying that something isn't money or is money. I'm being like kind of like high overview that, even if somebody clicks and it's like token XYZ, which is subjective to somebody, today the liquidity allows us to change it to objective income. And it's interesting that we can put objective income and personal value on the same scale. It's interesting. And again, I think that a lot of things, like you say, they haven't changed. There is still like a lot to explore there. Yeah, I've been watching that scene for a while, and definitely very excited to see what will win, whether or not, rather what, but how, like what would be the combination of value and income that will help, or reward and value that will help people to make that final flip in their minds.
So my co-founder so his name is Keen. I always remember something that he said about a movement. I think Web3 right now is a movement. Even what we did since, even though we started in 2017, we still think what we write on the white paper, this is a 10 years movement. We put it as a movement because we knew it could be a very disruptive idea in terms of decentralization, in terms of the tools that people need to adopt. So right now we're just in the middle of it. So 10 years, it seems very long, but when you think about it, it actually takes a new habit or a new era of some new business model to evolve actually take 10 years. It's a really short time. And I do believe we're just in the middle of it. So I think that's also our vision where we believe Likecoin will take this much time to evolve to a different kind of what we could achieve as a decentralized publishing solution.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely just the beginning, I think, of the journey. I don't think it's just the beginning, like a lot of people say, but it's definitely not the end, for sure. A quick question on the journey. I mean, for a project that has been around for a while, and not just the project yourself have been around in that space for a while. You've seen ups and downs, and you've seen projects while you're developed yours disappear, or, well, it's hard to make a crypto disappear, I guess, but to the extent of what a crypto can disappear. What would you say as a piece of advice to people not necessarily starting out their projects, but working on their projects already? And, maybe also for a while, or also maybe not. What would be your advice to these people to do what or not to do what?
It reminds me of one of my recent tweets. I tweet about our learning because it was the 3 years of the Litecoin chain last week, especially during the chaos of the fall of FTX. I believe a lot of people are suffered. And I actually personally feel bad to a lot of friends as well. So I would share one of the summary of my thread. So there are three things. I think first is to make sure you know why you are here and building what you're building. So our team has been told that we were too serious in terms of our product flow, internal procedures. We have been using multi-sig like really early on with like, I need to learn about command line, how to manage our wallet. And they actually benefit us from the recent FTX incidents because we understand how important it is, even though people telling us, hey, you guys are too serious. Come on, let's find something more convenient. So at this point where you need to stand on what you believe and you need to be persistent on it. So that's the first learning. And the second learning is there are a lot of temptation in Web3 where you can gain quick success, came from hyping up an idea or product. And people actually came as often to come and ask, hey, you have a whole full dev team. Why not just start another DeFi or NFT projects that can make a good learning? And the hard part is actually say no to these opportunities. And I think that's also come back to the first point where I say you need to know why you're here and what you're building. Thirdly, I think the mindset of running a startup is very important. So I'm very fortunate enough. A lot of my co-founders and our angel investor are from like a lot of them are YC alumni. They have their own successful business in Web 2 and Web 3. We've been studying a lot of like what is the lean startup methodology. We've been working a lot internal procedures and how our product should be in terms of learning and communicating with our users. So I think had a mindset to run your project as a startup and build fast, fail fast is something that we also learned in our experience in the past few years. And also because of the learning of lean startup, we know we cannot expand too quick to be lean. And so that's why we can survive a lot of crypto winters. I forgot how many of winters already. So I truly believe that Web3 is so big that isn't just about trading ethics or just about DeFi. You actually need to bring in solutions to problem that people are facing, not the other way around, to show that the potential of the actual usage of crypto. So when you come into the game, I think you have to have the mindset of being this is something in the long haul. It's not something in the short. Hide it. If this doesn't work, you leave. It will hurt a lot of your time and effort in this. So I think that would be three of my learning. And also the last tip maybe before this, I was in an exchange. I was in another crypto fund before being full time with the founding team of Likecoin. And I think being with the right people is very important. Especially, I love surrounded by builders. My team, except me, they're all coders. So I'm very fortunate that I am actually learning from them every other day. And I think that's very important in terms of being in Web3 as well, because they are very close to the tech. So that actually gives you a lot of faith in terms of what you're building. And then also thank to the community that actually stick around with us for a long time. And they actually see us evolve from different products and give us active feedbacks. So I think community is super important in terms of supporting your mission. So yeah, hopefully it's not too long, but that's my show.
No, it's perfect. I was just going to say that I think about crypto winters, we were lucky this time around. Lucky in brackets, we fucked up 2 months before the crypto winter came. So we were already working in advance. So for everybody out there, if you want a good advice, fuck up early and that sets you up for the bear market. The last kind of question, last blitz that I wanted to ask you is that there was the one that we ask all the guests. If you could give me three projects from the crypto space that you are interesting, it could be protocols as well, like IPFS, for example, that you're interesting and that you follow and that you think are interesting out there.
Yeah, I think the first one I would say is I had a really good time working with Protocol Labs people. IPFS community has been very supportive in what we do, and I got to spend a lot of time with them. So I think that would be something good to look at. You haven't heard about them. Second, I've been lately studying a lot about Lens Protocol, although that's not Cosmos ecosystem, but I think they're doing a great job in terms of the stack of what they could offer because it's quite similar to what we wanted to do. So I would love to learn more about them. And thirdly, let me name any favorite projects. Well, I don't have a particular name of a project, but I would love to share a group of community, especially because I attended their event in August in the US. They are the DWeb camp folks, DWeb. I think they're amazing people. I have never been to any kind of Web3 events that the discussion isn't about tokenomics, but in terms of the mission and vision. And the first question that they will ask when they come to you is how they can actually help. And I met a lot of great founders there, including Gatecoin, including Protocol Labs. including ceramic. So like there are a lot of like established Web3 players there where I had a conversation and know them as a person. So I think if anyone wants to, especially if they are looking for some kind of support, no matter it's mentally support or in terms of your product development of how you want to get new inspiration, I think they're a great community to be surrounded with. I think I benefit a lot from my presence there in the last couple months. So I would like to share this piece of opportunities to people who are looking for something different, especially in Web3. So hopefully that helps.
It's funny that you say that. Last night, ironic, sorry, not funny, that I was recording and most of the discussion happened around protocol labs and D-Web. The episode I was recording
Really?
with Fission.
Oh, vision. Okay, no wonder.
Yes. Second question. Wait, there's two more. Wait. Second question. Two things that motivate you in your daily life to keep on building decentralized distributed communication, I guess, and keep on building Likecoin and Likeland and everything else that you do. So, which two things motivate you in your daily life? If you could share them, of course.
One is community for sure. And when I say community, it's because I host our community call every month. Even though that could be a small scale or large scale, I would love to connect with users that actually give us active feedback and people who actually care about our product. I think that's especially important if you're a product owner, knowing someone actually cares about what you build. So I think that gives you a lot of motivation. And the second kind of community, of course, is like Citizen Cosmos. I just came back from Lisbon and I got to meet some Cosmos people face to face in person for the first time. And I'm very glad I actually did it because I finally know them as a person, not just knowing their projects, but actually knowing what kind of wine they like to drink or what kind of food they like. So I think it's important to have these kind of human connections, especially after COVID. And there are a lot of change in the world where human connection at the end of the day is some fundamental of being as a human. So I think that's quite important. So if you get a chance, go meet some people out there. And I think in general, a lot of Cosmos people are really nice, especially because they see me as a girl that just hanging around by myself. They're very taken care of. So I'm so glad that I actually met them. The other thing is that I think I mentioned already, but I would like to reinforce is surround yourself with builders. So people will actually understand what's going on. Spend less time on Twitter, just in between some argument of some kind of proposals. I think it takes a lot of manpower to be fully on those kind of conversations. But when you actually understand more about the technology, like even though like just how Cosmo works, talking to other projects actually made you more confident to talking to more people. Because I guess a lot of people had a hard time to jump in a lot of high end conversations like those that we see on Twitter. Sometimes it's just too intimidating for other people to jump in because we become our own circle. And I think that's not really healthy. But instead, like go talk to more builders in the space and try to understand what they do will help support what you're doing right now, even though you are just a speculator, you're a builder, you're project owners. So that helps. So it's awesome that we have this kind of podcast that we had a chance to share our experience and get to know more people.
Last one. One person could be a builder, a book writer, a coder, a writer that you know. Doesn't have to be a crypto person. One person that you would suggest, if it's a book, the book. If it's a person or a blog, or if it's a builder, it could be a GitHub account for everybody out there to follow that will be interesting for them.
I'm a little bit biased on this
Good.
because I think there are a lot of excellent English content right now already. But I think my co-founder Keen, he's a serial entrepreneur. He's been in gaming for a lot of years, and he co-founded Likecoin, and he wrote a book on sociology of blockchain. Actually, blow a lot of mind because it's the first blockchain book that not talk about tokenomics, but talk about the fundamental what is the value of money, what is the value of consensus, why DAO exists, like all these kind of things. I think lie behind actually the fundamental of blockchain in the sociology aspect. To understand it, it's great, especially for crypto 101, I guess. So if you are interested, I think a lot of majority of them are translated in English too. But he already got a book that was quite best selling. I think last earlier this year at the first acquisition they sold out in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So if you're interested, follow Keen Co, ckexpress.com. That's his blog. and he's a Creative Commons fans. So his stuff is open source and open content for sure. Advocate on that, and you can also support him via Litecoin or subscribe as well. Yeah, that's bias recommendation.
I think bias is good. It's good to be subjective, I think, sometimes. And definitely we will include this in the show notes and everything else, of course, that you mentioned. Phoebe, thank you very, 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 very much. It was a huge pleasure catching up with you and talking with you. And hopefully we'll catch up again in the future. Thank you very much, Els, for joining in.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I also saw another link here, which is our one of the community.
Yes.
Top Taiwan crypto writers in a lot of analysis. It's been awesome. So I also want to mention him as well.
Nice one. We'll include all of them.
Yeah.
Thanks. This content was created by the Citizen Cosmos Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating to Citizen Cosmos and help us to create more educational content.